So thank you all for your really collaborative support in the breakout sessions. I can already say from what I saw walking around that you really did collaborate and made some incredible progress on the theme. So I think we'll all be happy to see what happened in the sessions where we were not, though, because of course you saw what happened in your session, but there were also, unfortunately, other two sessions that were really grinding out some important work. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to ask the session coordinators one by one to come up and explain what happened in their session. We have a kind of common theme, which was the common theme of the conference, so that we have the trends, challenges, and priorities, and they're listed on an update chart for each one of the sessions, but each one of the session coordinators will come up and talk more about that. And the first session was group one. Thank you. I have kind of a loud voice, as people say. The first group was run by Felix, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what they did. They had four presentations about how individuals create the power of and the power of data can transform the internet. And then they went on to talk about how serious games can actually form the consensus on what we want the internet to be. So, Felix, can you come up and tell us about session one?
Thank you. Okay, yeah, so we as Engine Room ran session one. I'm just actually going to go over a bit here because I need this as my cheat sheet. Basically, our session was all about kind of the value of data. And my colleague Chris, who now had to run to the airport, summarized a bit our work in Engine Room, which I'm not going to do again, but I'm going to just instead focus on the kind of trends, challenges, and priorities that we got out of it. We also had a great talk by Steph Ruler. Was she? I can't see her. Anyway, and then we talked a bit, or I talked a bit about something we are developing in Engine Room, which is an NGI board game, which is so far in a prototype, but we then ran basically the central mechanic of the game, which involves weighing different values that we want in the future of the internet against each other, and basically getting people in the room to decide what they value more in specific situations, how to resolve hard dilemmas for the future of the internet. So a lot of the stuff that came out of the session was focused around values. Again, as I already mentioned, the first trend, so to speak, that we identified is the power of data, how to use data, how to make sure that where data is used, it's used in an ethical manner. Especially important out of these values was also privacy, so the desire to kind of ensure that people are aware where the data is used, how the data is used, and also kind of a thought on data retention. So how long is my data actually being stored? Where could it end up in the future once I've long forgotten about it? And generally the importance of balancing these values against each other. So for example, the right to privacy against the use of data for analysis purposes. Under the challenges, that was rather the kind of one of the big challenges that came out of the discussions that people had in groups in our session. Another one was the tension between control, the influence the government or governments have on the internet, and a kind of more laissez-faire approach where we kind of let the market sort it out, where we let companies come up with solutions for problems and then let citizens decide what they want to do with that. And another challenge of that that we identified was the need to anonymize data if it is to be used, which we had in several of the discussions, because basically people saying, I would be happy for my data to be included in analysis, but it would be important to me that it's in an anonymized way that doesn't give away my personal information. So this is one of the priority areas as well, and as I mentioned already, the kind of general awareness and discourse, so that stuff doesn't just happen, we get terms and conditions, we click I accept and move on, but that we actually know what we are buying into, that it's understandable what we're buying into, and that kind of this is also followed through, and that companies who say they're going to treat our data in a fair way also do that. that also applies to actions of governments and governmental organizations. When they use data, they should be open about what data they hold, why they hold it, and what they're using it for. Yeah. Thank you.
So thanks a lot, Felix. Your session, did it teach you anything? Did you expect everything that happened to happen in that way? I mean, I know in Engine Room you guys have already used this approach. I've never seen that approach. It's very, very innovative and very interesting. But did it give you the results? Did you walk in here and know what you were going to say?
So as I mentioned, we did group work. So we had small groups discussing the same couple of scenarios. All the scenarios involved a pretty tricky dilemma, for example, between banning free speech in order to safeguard an election from foreign interference. And it was quite interesting to see that a lot of the groups went quite different ways with it. So some groups very straight went for all the most privacy-conscious options. Other groups were much more happy for kind of companies to take the lead and just design business models and to like kind of let it go. And I thought that was quite interesting because I didn't necessarily expect there'd be such a divergence also within the group, such a fierce kind of debate. And yeah.
Ah, okay, great. Were those of you who were in the room, did you walk away knowing exactly what happened? Did you expect to happen what happened? Do you have any particular questions for Felix right now before he gets off the stage? Did you see our friend Ricardo over here, how he's drawing? Do you think he did the NGI for Dummies graphics? Do those reflect what you saw happen? You like the results and takeaway?
Yeah, I really liked them. Like, I think it's captures, like, for example, the one with the balance. I think really captures one of the certainly key elements that we wanted to kind of bring to the session, of the fact that that different values are important, but you can't always just pick one. You often need to kind of pick a bit of both and find a good compromise in between.
Okay, so you guys are actually using this approach in the CSA engine room. How can they come and follow your work? How can they do it again at home? How can they get more involved?
So we do have a newsletter, which I can post a link to, presumably, where we kind of talk about the ongoing work we do and like share some stuff that we're reading that we find interesting, but also, of course, the things that we're developing. One of those things is, as I mentioned in the session, an NGI board game, which is meant to kind of bring that mechanic and allow people to kind of play through these scenarios and make kind of these choices in a group between different paths for the future of the internet.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and another round of applause for Felix in Group 1.
Thank you.
All right, and moving forward with Group 2, okay, that was no big surprise, we have Marta. And Marta had, again, a session where they had four speakers introducing the challenges that were to be dealt with, and then they went and broke into little groups where they actually had practitioners give some hand-on advice. So people that actually are working with these technologies, and they worked with the other people in the room that maybe furthered the discussion, maybe not. I guess now you'll tell us.
Okay, so we discussed not only decentralization, but we also did a sort of meta-discourse about decentralizing the funding mechanism for government funds. So I will go first into the decentralization, classic decentralization topic. So what was really interesting as a trend is that citizen participation was highlighted as a trend. People are getting more and more interested. There is more and more awareness also about the censorship mechanisms that are out there and the lack of liberty of expression. And of course, decentralized technologies mean also centralized business models for the moment, unfortunately. And a very dominant part was also the fact that we are trying to apply blockchain everywhere, and so there is this sort of tokenization trend taking place in every industry. In terms of challenges, there was a focus on how to build a community of peers discussing these topics, and how to avoid the dominant players. So again, how to be like what Felix was highlighting, the balance of power, it's very important. I think the very good outcome was discussing capacity building. That is has been identified as a challenge, but also as a priority. So how do we form people? How do we avoid the digital divide that was presented in previous sessions? Then we have everything that is around making it more user-centric instead of business-centric, and give more agency to people, especially in dealing with their data and in extracting value for themselves from their own data. In terms of priorities, there is literacy, as I said, then an open and secure infrastructure, sustainability at environmental but also economic level, new business models that need to be developed to avoid going back again to centralized business models. We have to adapt existing businesses to this kind of systems. And then we have to build truly decentralized ways of managing data. As I was mentioning before, and I think it's useful for the coming session, we have also been discussing how to kind of decentralize the funding mechanism. So thanks, that's really helpful. So one of the challenges that was set was how do we go for 24 months to deliver funds to 24 weeks, which it's a good challenge. So the trends that we see at the moment in the delivering funds is that people, governments, the European Commission, they're reducing the time to market. They're trying to do that and to distribute quicker the funds, to decentralize the process of picking up the winners, and to tokenize the support to startups. But the challenges are, what are the external limits that are define the work to be done? Because, for instance, the governance at the intermediary level, the delivery level, the governmental one is still extremely bureaucratical. And how do we change the storytelling? And in terms of priorities, we have the mean to focus on value discussions, not just on technology, to go up with the one call for all the topics every 6 months, and to incentivize the market outcomes beyond the project compliance. That was it. And I think that just to conclude, because it was also, we discussed which are the elephants in the room of decentralization. And I would pick just a couple of them, because I think they're very valuable for the discussion. One was regulation. So the speed of regulation is a big elephant in the room when we talk about decentralization. And related to this, we always talk about regulation or big companies, but we don't talk much about individuals. So about the effects that regulation has on them, and on the other side, on how we can push a different behavior, so a different way to engage with technology. That's it.
Thank you very much. Were you happy with your session? Could it have been better?
There are always margin of improvement in life, no? But yes, no, I'm very happy.
So the same question I asked Felix, did you walk into the room knowing what the results would be? Or do you think you actually were surprised by some of the input?
Well, I mentioned a couple of things that for me were more surprising, positive. The focus on citizen participation and on the role of people, so in kind of bottom-up processes, and the literacy problem, which is a big one. we can keep talking about this topic in our small group, but then we have also to make sure that the people are there will utilize the different kind of tools. So I think these were the main outcomes. And I really have to thank the 4 speakers who I asked them to be provocators, to come with a challenge, and they really did a great job in thinking about what are the real challenges there.
So maybe we can ask them if they found any not interesting, of course it was all interesting, but any potential solutions to the challenges that they brought up that were now innovative. Can you walk over and ask them? Do it.
Guys?
Right there. Are you still in the blind with your challenge, or did you get anything out of that group?
No, we did get enough and good, and also a challenge. We had someone challenging our team that then left the room, and I'm looking to see if I see him, because the challenge that he made on our proposal, on our outcome, was the most important thing. Our part was the specific one on bringing government funding distribution through blockchain from 24 months to 24 weeks. And the question the challenger made, maybe someone in the audience can also, here it is. He said, like, he made the analogy with airplanes. Everybody wants to make airplane onboarding more efficient, but airlines don't really care that much because they still need the time to refuel and this and that. So he said, while you try to do the same with government funding distribution, is there a similar element in that will limit that? And I didn't have the answer. So I got an interesting question to reflect on. So it was very useful for me. Thank you.
Thank you
and
very
thank
much.
you for Marta. She did a great job.
Yeah, Marta. All right, put another guy on the spot.
Sorry guys, I didn't sign up for this. I wasn't aware.
I have to admit, Marta was not doing this very voluntarily. We had to bend her
I've been
arm.
obliged. I just wanted to stay home.
Yeah, so we were not prepared for this. We were not expecting somebody to ask for solutions, because we were exploring challenges and other things, right, and trends. But what was surprising for me is what I wanted to say is that after sharing many trends, after sharing challenges, we vote for which ones in our group was more important. And I was surprised that we value a lot the trend of participation, citizen participation. And that also we think one of the biggest challenges is how to create a community that will build the next generation internet in a decentralized manner. So I think they match together really well, and it was a surprise for me that many of the people involved in the participation believe that it's both a trend and something we have to push forward. So probably we are going in the right direction.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
well,
thank you to Marta as well.
Again, to group 2, let's have a round of applause, and thank you for your hard work. Group 3 was outside playing volleyball on the court, but they got back, and Jim changed, and he's up now, and he's going to make something up completely about. No, that's not true. Jim, you guys were talking about SME roles in the designing the future internet, and then you broke up into 4 groups, explaining exactly what you thought each one of those things should deal with in terms of challenges and gaps according to this schedule. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened in Group 3?
Sure thing, Richard. So as my colleague Paul mentioned, we had 4 perspectives as appetizers in the session. One from the perspective of the SME's role in the NGI and the importance of that role. And for this we had an SME that has successful tools already in cultural heritage. Then we had another appetizer from the perspective of semantic technologies for search and discovery for data and contents. Then we had another one looking at it from the perspective of an open data portal from Slovenia and the challenges and the lessons learned from this. And then finally, we had a appetizer from tackling online disinformation, which is very topical today. So we then broke into 4 different groups, and we then examined them right from the human values perspective, the challenges created by these human values, some potential solutions, known initiatives, the gaps, and then ultimately, what are the research and innovation required by NGI? So it's very difficult to break these down here. So my apologies, or you can jump in any time if I'm missing anything. So in terms of the trends, we live in a time now where there's a lot of sensationalism and a lot of negativity, and almost this creation of needs is happening. And then also there's a somewhat implicit authority on the platform. So we heard some interesting examples of how some students were relating things in history, like the Titanic did not hit an iceberg, or the student thought the Titanic didn't hit an iceberg but had actually burned instead, and he had learned this from a YouTube that he had seen, but he believed it because it was on YouTube. Then also the importance of the SMEs in the NGI was highlighted, and we also discussed ways of balancing the scales from the way they are today, how to different ways for perhaps getting the SMEs and the startups and even individuals that are involved in the cascading funded projects to get a step up and to be recognized quickly, so that their work, the importance of their work, will be recognized and sort of balance the scale between the smaller companies and the larger companies. And then there's a trend for people protecting their data using personal data spaces. And then there's sort of a disparity between the openness of the NGI that we're discussing. So in terms of challenges, we discussed a wide range of them. One of them being the trustworthiness of the content from end to end.
She also
Yes.
wants to say something.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm sorry. I was supposed to share the platform with my colleague, Sarah. Okay. Yeah, so we have the content on our consultation platform as well. So in much more detail than over here. So do you want me to continue?
Yeah, no, just to say that we've started collecting the information gathered out of our session in the channel that we have created for this forum in the consultation platform, which is one of the services, I would say, that together with the other CSAs, so with the Engine Room and NGI Move, we as Speak NGI are providing to contribute to the NGI framework. So if you, from tomorrow, if you go online and look for the consultation link on the main NGI website, you can start having your say and contributing to the discussion that you had in these days. And I would also say that what we need from you is your contribution on articles, your papers, because as Speak NGI, we're maintaining the knowledge base of NGI, the AGI and debate. And this is where we concentrate our effort. And we are also going to provide you with a final yellow paper at the end of, probably at the beginning of next year. So all content that we are gathering in these events and out of the discussions that are going on the web will be then produced and delivered in a coherent, let's say, and searchable, I would say, format.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Like Sarah told you and Jim has been explaining, all of this material is on the web. I don't want to just give a plug to Speak NGI, but all of the information regarding this and also the survey that was being administered outside is on their website. Hey, please have a look at that. We're going to keep going. They're telling me that they're bored with this. No, she didn't say that. She just said we're beyond the schedule. Thank you very much to Group 3 for excellent job and